Day and welcome to this In Conversation With, organized by the Academy of Science of South Africa. My name is Julian May. I'm a member of the Academy of Science, and I chair the Standing Committee on Science for the Reduction of Poverty and Inequality. With me today, I am in conversation with Imraan Valodia. Imraan has recently been appointed as the Pro Vice-Chancellor, Climate, Sustainability and Inequality. So, Imraan, it's been more than a decade since you and I left the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where we were at the School of Development Studies. I came to UWC and you went on to WITS to become the Dean of Commerce, Law and Management. Now you hold this exciting new position. So tell us, why has WITS decided on the idea of a Pro Vice-Chancellor, and what is the strategic thinking behind this move?
Great, Julian. Thank you. Let me start by just thanking SF and especially you for kind of setting this up. It's a kind of huge honor for me to be speaking at this event. So thank you for that, Julian. And nice to be reflecting on some of these things with you after the many years we had together. So specific to the question, so I think the view of the university is that kind of as an institution, we need to kind of contribute meaningfully to kind of solving what I think we would all agree is the most important challenge that is facing society. So the kind of thinking behind setting up the Pro VC was that we would argue that that this is an area that requires integrated thinking and that requires us to work across the disciplines that I think divide academic thinking. Kind of specific to South Africa, we would say we can't really think about this problem and think about the solutions without kind of integrating at least the natural sciences with it, with kind of at least the health sciences, and at least with the economic and social sciences, so that the kind of idea of the Pro VC's office at WITS is really to serve as a coordinating function for us to kind of really work on two things. One is to build our capacity in the specific kind of areas that we're going to need, and secondly, to build our capacity across these across the disciplines. So that's the main thinking about it. We have the kind of intention of both working inside the university, but also thinking about work outside the university. So part of my function is to bring kind of the university's expertise and make it available to policy makers and to civil society organizations, because I think we would argue that solutions to these problems both kind of require integrated thinking within the university, but also integration kind of outside the university, so that we support policy and that we support institutions that are quite critical to us getting to solutions that kind of address both the climate, the kind of pure climate science of it, but as much the kind of economic and the social dimensions of it.
That's great. Well, I see we've been joined by quite a nice audience, and to the people that are listening, please feel free to post any comments that you'd like to make in the chat. And if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that Imraan also addresses the questions in addition to the discussion that he and I are going to be having. My name is Julia May. I'm in conversation with Professor Imraan Valodia, WITS's new Pro Vice-Chancellor in Climate, Sustainability and Inequality. Well, thanks for that, Imraan. You've outlined what the purpose of the new position is. How does it actually work in practice? Because trying to get these kinds of collaborations going is not easy, and certainly breaking down the traditional barriers of the academy, trying to link both across disciplines, but between universities and policymakers and civil societies is not an easy job. What are you thinking about the ways in which you're going to actually implement the ambition?
Yeah, I think you kind of spot on there. So I think academics are kind of really good at kind of arguing for kind of multi, and transdisciplinary approaches to kind of research, but we kind of really bad at actually doing this. So there's a few things that we've done. I mean, the first initiative that we've had as part of the Pro VC office was to set up a seminar program that where we're trying to bring kind of South African and international kind of researchers and thinkers and social activists around the climate change issue. And we've had a number of quite high-profile events in this regard. The kind of second, and here's, I think, where we've probably done the most amount of work. I think my kind of approach was to say, let's start within the WITS system itself. So we kind of set up a process where we called for kind of short abstracts from kind of anyone in the WITS system who is doing work on climate change, and then had a kind of 2-day workshop in the university where basically we got all of our colleagues to really share the kind of research that they themselves are doing. And we got abstracts from kind of all across the university. So people working on the social science of mining of coal, to people in our engineering faculty who are doing work on kind of green hydrogen, colleagues who are doing work on ways in which you can continue to mine coal, but in kind of less harmful ways. We had colleagues in health sciences who are doing really fascinating research on the impacts of climate change on health. We had our climate modeling colleagues in science, and we even had some kind of theoretical physicists who were thinking about ways in which solar systems can be made a lot more efficient. People were working on land use, etc. So it was a really exciting start to that process, and we're now kind of looking at how we can build better integrated teams that come out of that process. As far as our students go, we've been doing lots of kind of thinking and work on how we can better integrate climate change in, kind of into our teaching. So you'll be interested to know that every first-year student at WITS who comes to the university and who, as part of our orientation program, we run a short course on climate change with them. We looking at our portfolio of kind of undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD programs, and looking at how we can kind of incentivize students to work across kind of across the disciplines. So we're thinking about kind of about some PhD support that would have only one requirement, and that's that you have to be thinking about the problem kind of in a way that would cross your disciplinary boundary. And then in terms of the university working with outside actors, we've had a number of meetings and engagements, for example, with the Presidential Climate Commission, with colleagues in kind of other universities. We kind of engaging in a group across countries in the kind of in the global south to look at how we can build expertise in areas that would require specific investments, for example, in kind of areas such as the economic modeling of climate change. So quite a range of things we're doing. We kind of learning as we're going. So it's been a process with a bit of a steep sort of learning curve. And I think one thing I should emphasize, we kind of trying to do this in kind of in a way that is not going to duplicate resources in the university. So I work closely with our 5 deans. I work with the executives in the university. We have some key institutions kind of across the university. So my own office is just me with a colleague who we've appointed to support me, and it's really quite a lean office in kind of in that way.
Well, there's been a question from the audience. Patricia Forbes asks about if you could develop a little further the links between the Presidential Commission and comments on the just energy transition. So perhaps you might like to just reflect on that for a minute before we move on.
Yeah. So there's kind of so much that I think South African higher education institutions and the kind of academy in general can do kind of around the just transition. My sense is we all use the word just transition without sort of really thinking through the full implications of it. But it's kind of interesting. I was looking at some data recently about kind of South African emissions by per capita, by class or by income group. And what's striking about it is for kind of higher income groups, the kind of emissions per capita for South Africa sit very much in the same league as kind of the UK or the US, and for those among the low income groups, the kind of emissions sit kind of pretty much with your average developing country, and this kind of inequality in how our society operates is, I think, really key to how we need to kind of think about this climate problem and how we need to think about the energy transition. So kind of unless you know, those of us who are involved in kind of research can be imaginative enough to build the inequality lens into how we think about this issue. I think that without that, we're not really going to think creatively about the trade-offs. We're not going to creatively think about how we solve a range of other problems in our society as well. So I think there's massive scope for us to work across the academy to support the policy process. And from my engagements with the PCC, I get the sense that they really kind of keen to build these partnerships across the universities.
It's very nice to see that among those that have joined the discussion today are quite a few of our former students and one of the things I remember very much about you from those days is your passion for economics and your insistence that we teach development studies students a course in economics. And I remember you once said, you don't want a course which is economics for dummies. You want a course which is equips a person to be able to engage with economists. So you mentioned lots of exciting disciplines when you were talking earlier about how you go about this in practice. And WITS has chosen to put an economist into this position. What's the reason for that? What do you think that brings to this kind of work?
Yeah, I think part of the thinking in WITS was that kind of, as I said before, the kind of inequality dimensions of this transition are kind of absolutely key. And I think relatedly, I think the kind of issues of kind of growth and the issues of how we kind of how we cost out and kind of think about kind of some of the choices are kind of issues that I think that have economics at kind of at the heart of it. So if we think about the kind of international dimensions of it, you know, one way to make sense of the issue is that what the world kind of has had is a kind of particular stock of kind of greenhouse gases that we could use to kind of advance a growth process that I think has delivered growth sort of over the last 100 years at a level that maybe we would never have imagined. But that has happened in a hugely unequal way. And I think the kind of situation that we're in now really stops kind of other countries from following that path, and so there's two parts to that issue. The first is that there's got to be some sort of international accounting exercise that says kind of here's the growth that has happened, and here's the costs that have been associated with that growth, and here's the kind of international inequality in how that has happened, and for that the kind of loss and damage components of the Paris Agreement, and it's kind of going to be the key issue that's going to be discussed at COP27. So I think this kind of international kind of rebalancing, which is really partly an economic issue is really kind of really critical. The kind of second part of the economics of that, I think, is that whatever accounting we've done about the growth process based on fossil fuels has kind of really neglected a huge amount of the social, the health, and kind of related costs of that process. So, I mean, you just have to kind of have to drive through parts of the coal mining areas in South Africa to see that we kind of paying a huge environmental, a huge health, a huge social cost for kind of economic growth that was based on kind of exploitation of fossil fuels. And my own view is that kind of unless we can show that kind of alternative pathways for kind of growth that would be based on cleaner technologies, that would be based on a fuller costing of the externalities, might actually deliver kind of options for growth that would advance society, that would deal with poverty, that would deal with job creation, etc. We're not really going to manage this transition in a reasonable way. So I think economics is kind of really at the core of how we need to think about it. And I think part of the thinking at WITS was that it kind of requires someone to kind of lead the initiative, who could bring together the science, the economics, and kind of the social science, and perhaps the Vice-Chancellor thought that I have some of those skills, and kind of it was really his kind of, in the end, it was his decision.
I'd like to push you a bit further on the issue of the economics, the economic benefits of adopting an alternative approach to energy, for example. As you know, I serve in the National Planning Commission, and one of the colleagues, Mark Swilling, I think, and also you know Mark well, has also argued of the natural resource that South Africa has and is not exploiting, the sunshine, the wind, and the opportunities for a transition which generates jobs and possibly generates more jobs that might be lost if we were to continue on the path that we are. What would be your thinking around that notion, the opportunities in new technologies, and of what we can do in building such an industry in South Africa?
Yeah, Julian. So you know, the country in general is not one where the kind of developments for the last sort of few years leaves one optimistic. But I think one of my big sort of learnings since I've taken this job and have started to kind of try to make sense of it all is that I'm kind of feeling a bit more optimistic about the kind of possibilities for South Africa to come out of this transition in a way where we might say, kind of in general, societies in South Africa are better off than but they are. So we tend perhaps to see too much of the downsides. I think if we think about our economy, I would agree with Mark that there are some fantastic opportunities for South Africa. So if we just take kind of our resource base under the ground, we're a a kind of economy that has relied on mining and kind of exploitation of minerals. Our experts in mining and minerals have exposed me to a kind of set of scenarios and a kind of stock take on our mining and mineral space. And I think the feeling I take out of that is that we might well kind of end up with much more mining than we have at present. And then I think you're right, some of the natural advantages that we have with kind of sunlight are kind of really an exciting opportunity. So as part of the Pro VC's job, I had the benefit of spending some time in Uppington, and kind of we went to see how some of these new solar plants actually operate, and it's really exciting stuff. You know, there's the kind of best place in the world to run solar plants is in Uppington. And we have a fantastic advantage there. I also think there's a wider or a sort of larger economic issue that might work well for South Africa. So most fossil fuel based kind of industrialization projects kind of, I think, require investments and require a kind of industrialization process that are done at massive scale. So kind of, if you kind of think about Eskom in its heyday, the massive investments that we made had to be amortized over a long period of time, and required kind of associated investments in metal production, etc., that are hugely capital intensive and don't really deliver large amounts of jobs. I think if you think about the new forms in which energy might be produced, I think there's possibilities for that scale to be thought of in a different way, and that you can think about much more localized economies that don't require the scale that you need on fossil fuel systems. And I think for a sort of country like us, that might be quite an interesting option for us to think about.
I think you've just given the municipality, the David Kruger municipality, some good news, and they can think about how to structure what the local municipality can do to encourage more such development. Well, that maybe brings me to the next line of thought that I was pursuing. Again, Imraan, I think I'm finding it very interesting to be having a conversation with a colleague that I've known for a long time. But you know, the new steps that you're taking in your career and how that's been advancing. I recall in the 1980s and 1990s. When we first met, you were very much involved with civil society organizations, including the trade union movement, and always had a passion of how to bridge between the work of an academic and then how civil society organizations can make use of the information, can engage in the processes, as well as, in a sense, become a part of the process it's yourself. Is some of this in your thinking of in the position of Pro Vice-Chancellor? And again, I'm Julia May. I'm in conversation with Professor Imraan Valodia. And please remember, you can put your questions into the Q&A or use the chat to engage with us. So, Paul, thinking about what you used to do and what you're doing now, is there a bridge?
Yeah, I think I kind of like to argue absolutely so, Julian. So kind of think my kind of entire academic entire academic life has been one where I've been kind of interested in research that is kind of really geared to kind of changing society in a way where where the lives of those who are marginalized is kind of somehow improved. And I think lots of the work that we did together in the 90s, lots of the work in Durban was really geared up, geared with that sort of thinking in mind. I think this kind of issue is not an issue that one can leave to the experts. I think the nature of any transition that is going to be made involves a number of very complicated issues around vested interests, around questions of who's borne the benefits of the past and who's going to have to pay the costs of the transition. I think if we just think about South Africa's place in the globe, kind of in the global economy, although we not one of the largest producers of greenhouse gases, I think the kind of implications of climate change on South Africa and kind of in general on countries in the global South is that we're going to clearly have to pay a higher price for the transition than what countries in the north are going to have to pay. So these kinds of issues are not only going to be solved by kind of technical experts who are able to bring some of the evidence on these questions to bear, but it's going to be about kind of all sorts of actors in society, kind of especially those who speak for those who are poor, for those who are marginalized, to force to kind of force us to deal with these issues. So kind of in this job, we kind of really looking to both supporting policy makers, but kind of also supporting social actors, so that the kind of trade-offs are clearly kind of understood, so that we do the costing and the numbers kind of in a way that everyone understands, and that we kind of build the capacity of those who are going to have to pay a price to kind of force some sort of realignment. I mean, just one sort of practical example I've been kind of thinking of. So I kind of happened to be in Germany about 3 weeks ago. And for those of you who've been following European developments, you'll know that they're really, really concerned about their energy as they kind of enter the winter. So what are the Germans doing? They kind of restarting some of the coal plants that they've shut down. Now there's something sort of really wrong with the fact that we being asked and being supported by funding that partly comes from the north to make the transition away from coal, and the politicians in Europe who can't sort of really face their public with kind of energy shortages, kind of starting up some of the coal plants that they've shut down. And I think these kind of inequities, these contradictions in how we're dealing with the problem really need to be exposed. As kind of academics, we can provide the technical expertise, the numbers, but it's really going to require social action to change some of it.
That's interesting, and interesting that that same passion is still with you to be able to, as you say, assist those that are going to carry the cost to be able to develop their own plans and their own ways of adapting and coping, in addition to what we might want to try and persuade policymakers to do. I think that's all the more important because the climate change scenarios that we had in mind, that we thought would kick in around 2030, we're seeing the changes now, and it's whether it's runaway bushveld fires, whether it's erratic climates. In the region that I live, we are seeing the trees blossoming much earlier than they ought to be, and we're already starting to experience days that are in excess of 35 degrees. Do you think our economy is ready to adapt? And what, if not, where do we need to start? What should we be prioritizing right now to be able to cope with the changes that are taking place?
Yeah, so you're right, Julian. I mean, I think it's a sort of failure of society, and partly perhaps a failure of the research community that we as kind of human beings have got ourselves into a situation where we're now having to deal with something that can't be reversed, right? So the kind of latest IPCC reports, I think, make sort of quite clear that even under the best case scenarios, we can't keep global warming to any level below an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So as a global society, I think we've failed to see the evidence. Maybe as members of the science community, we need to perhaps take some responsibility for the fact that we haven't got policy makers to change as fast as they should have. But we're where we are, and we're going to have to deal with it. I mean, on kind of how we deal with it, or kind of are we kind of in a situation where we can deal with it? I really don't think we have an option, Julian. You know, this is the more I sort of learn about climate change, the more it's kind of clear to me that kind of unless society kind of across the world comes together to kind of keep global warming to something kind of around the 1.5 to 2 degrees, I can genuinely think we're onto something really catastrophic, and that the kind of implications are kind of too ghastly to kind of even think about. So we kind of going to have to make this transition. But kind of, I think for the South African economy, the key kind of priorities would be, firstly, to kind of really understand what is going to happen, and to kind of develop some sort of scenarios for the next few decades. And I think there's been some fantastic work done by the PCC, by members of our climate modeling units at the different universities, for us to really understand what the key parameters of that of that adaptation has to be. So clearly, kind of energy is going to require a huge the level of investment. We're going to have to change the kind of the way we think about energy, the way we produce energy, and the way we use kind of the way we use energy. I think secondly, some of the kind of adaptation requirements that are going to have to be part of our policy design really need to be built into how we would think about our society for the next while. So here's one stat that made me almost fall on my back. So some of our colleagues in health sciences are doing some work on what might be the implications of kind of increases in temperature on childbirth. And based on a systematic review, their kind of evidence suggests that for a 1 degree rise in temperatures, we're likely to see preterm births increase by something in the order of about 10%. Now, if you think about the kind of implications of that for health expenditure and for kind of health insurance, for childcare, for kind of how we think about kind of all of that, there's a huge amount of adaptation that we're going to have to do, and I think that's that kind of social dimension of it's really, really important. And then thirdly, I'd say the employment kind of question is really key for us. You know, how do we transition in a way that is kind of going to limit the numbers of jobs that we lose in coal and in kind of certain parts of the country, with kind of rises in employment elsewhere. But it seems to me you have to think about some sort of compensation mechanisms that would safeguard those who are going to be negatively affected. And I think that compensation has both a kind of international and a national dimension. And I kind of see kind of at least doing the numbers on that to be quite a key issue.
Well, on the numbers, we have an interesting question from, I suppose we should have expected a difficult question from one of our former students. Chantal Munthry has asked a question about the indicators that are, and the reporting that is needed for the recent Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the things that needs to be reported are not only the climate impact, but also the climate impact disaggregated by gender, by geography, by different social class. Obviously, the national statistics organizations hold the responsibility for this reporting, but have you any thoughts about how WITS, and I mean, we should also think about how the academy itself could join the conversation about generating better statistics for our understanding the impact of climate change?
Hi, Chantal. Thanks for that question. So my kind of honest answer to it is that we kind of certainly at WITS we haven't started to engage with that process, but I kind of agree with you that it's an urgent issue, and that it's something that we should be doing. I mean, somewhat relatedly, with colleagues in our Inequality Center, we wrote a piece recently in the popular press, making the argument that that kind of some of the gender dimensions of kind of climate change are kind of issues that we really need to kind of need to think about, and that that we should really be careful that the cost of the adjustment doesn't fall kind of disproportionately on women. So I think that kind of reporting on that data is really crucial. Kind of arising out of this this chat, I'll certainly engage with kind of Julian's successor at the Stats Council, and see if there's something that we can do to support that, to kind of support the data systems.
Imraan, you probably know that my successor is another former student, a former colleague of ours, Nompu Nzimandi. So I'm sure you'll find it ready to be able to engage. To go back to the question now of the core business of a university, which is our teaching and learning. And clearly there's a huge challenge now, because universities are now going to have to bear the responsibility of creating a new generation of leaders in business, in government and in civil society, who are going to have to be able to be skilled to deal with issues of climate change. You've mentioned this a little bit already, and we had a question from Malusi Twala, who wanted a bit more detail about the incentives, the kind of incentives that WITS is offering or considering to offer to encourage students to work more in the field and to think more in the field. I've just participated in a Research Week webinar that UWC's Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research and Innovation organized. And one of the things that was said there, that while climate change is an important topic in its own right, universities are also very keen now to promote more interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary research, and are also looking for topics which encourage that kind of research. Climate change clearly is transdisciplinary in nature. So I think you could also perhaps comment on some of the incentives that we could think about for faculties or for departments to be able to rethink how they go about their offerings.
Just one kind of preliminary point. You know, I completely agree that we should be kind of promoting a lot more research that is transdisciplinary, and that we should be kind of incentivizing students and kind of offering programs that build an expertise in the country on kind of thinking about the climate change problem in a trans or multi-disciplinary way. But I think we should be careful to kind of also kind of acknowledge and build kind of programs that are kind of going to kind of develop our expertise in some quite critical disciplines where you're going to need a deep level of understanding kind of about the discipline. So I spent some of the time before this event talking to one of our climate modelists, Professor Francois Engelbrecht, on kind of how he does climate modeling and the resources and the expertise that he needs for that. And it's quite clear to me that you require both that deep discipline expertise to do the kinds of things that he does, but we also need another group of people that are going to be thinking in an kind of in an integrated way. So kind of at WITS, we're thinking about how we should kind of incentivize and build our expertise in both of those areas. So on the kind of interdisciplinary kind of aspects, I think we wanting to kind of really develop new programs, and we kind of looking across the university from kind of geography to economics to kind of social policy and kind of thinking about how we can draw kind of all of the expertise that we have, but kind of offer students enough to kind of understand enough about all of those problems in an integrated way. And we were wanting to raise funding to support masters and PhDs to kind of to work together through some sort of cohort arrangements, which we would which would allow the students themselves to really engage with each other. We're also thinking about partnerships with other universities. So kind of internationally, we have we kind of have a special relationship with the University of Edinburgh, and we kind of looking at some kind of cross disciplinary programs with them. As far as the academics go, yeah, it's a much. I mean, to kind of actually get people to work together in an interdisciplinary way, kind of I think is much harder than we would like it to be, and we're thinking in kind of in the WITS system about building onto the workshop that I mentioned earlier, and kind of having a set of these events as part of our standard activities inside the university to ensure that we have that cross fertilization happening as part of our normal academic year.
I guess it takes us back to economics, doesn't it? It's about the incentives, and unfortunately at the moment our incentive systems are not very well geared towards transdisciplinary research. So you've been in the position now for what, 4 months? I wonder, what have you learned? What do you think you've learned that you didn't know before? You've mentioned you've already given a few examples, and where do you think you should be directing your attention next? What next is there to learn while you hold this position?
Yeah, so I think the key the key lessons I've learned is I mean, as I said, I think I'm kind of fortunately a lot more optimistic about our prospects to manage this transition kind of in a way that might leave South African society better off than we are at present. I'm kind of also quite a lot clearer, I think, that the international dimension kind of this inequality is kind of something that we have to bring to the fore. And I think one kind of priority for us at the university is that I think we more than ever kind of convinced that we should be building partnerships in the global South and kind of building capacity for us to be able to kind of research these kinds of questions in a way that kind of integrates with countries like ours. So I don't think this transition is a space where national, regional, and a set of developmental interests are not going to be absolutely core to the transition. As things stand, kind of, I think countries in the globe, in the global South, are kind of at a huge disadvantage because, firstly, we haven't benefited as much as we should have from the previous fossil fuel-based kind of growth that we've had for much of the post-industrial revolution time. Kind of secondly, clearly the costs are going to be borne a lot more by countries in the global South. And thirdly, we have less kind of research capacity to be able to understand these issues and to be able to think about to kind of think about the solutions. So I think kind of in investments across universities in the global South is a really key thing that we all should be thinking about, and there's a huge agenda here, I think, for us to work together with many others who are in more or less the same position that we're in.
Well, we've got 2 minutes, just 2 minutes left. It's been really great to have a conversation with you like this, Imraan. It reminds me of tea time chats that we used to have. One last question has just been dropped in by Kathleen Deeger, who's asking about the opportunities for linking on-the-ground practitioners to academia in ways in which we can share learning. She's concerned that communities have the capacity to share solutions about their energy deficiency, their climate-aware practices, and that we need to find ways in which we can elicit that information. Some thoughts of that in your last minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of agree. I think that there's a great sort of danger in the experts kind of doing their thing in this area without really building on the huge amount of expertise and all of the experience that we have on the ground. So I kind of strongly support building stronger partnerships. Yeah, it's quite striking that last week, Cabinet approved something that's called the JET-P, which is a partnership for kind of how we're going to do this transition. But there really hasn't been kind of enough engagement and enough enough consulting with those kind of on the ground who are experiencing these effects every day. I mean, you only have to have kind of seen the impacts of the flooding in Durban recently to understand that we really have to be kind of thinking about these impacts and drawing in everyone kind of into the process. Kind of, Julian, let me thank you for setting this up, and I kind of really enjoyed the conversation. It is like kind of going back to our School of Development Studies days, and it's great to see so many students from that time kind of in the audience. Kind of, I think the only thing we're missing is the fantastic food we used to have there.
That's correct. I was thinking the same. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to ASA for organizing this. We've been in conversation with Professor Imraan Valodia, the new Pro Vice-Chancellor on Climate, Sustainability and Inequality at WITS. The In Conversation series is exactly that. It's a conversation between two people who've known each other and who can share ideas. Have a very good day further. Thank you.